What if I told you that the moment an empath breaks their soul contract, the entire universe shifts? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about spiritual contracts and psychological bonds will completely redefine everything you thought you knew about empaths and their destiny. Carl Jung said that certain souls enter agreements before they're even conscious of making them. And nowhere is this more evident than in the empath who has unconsciously bound themselves to heal, to fix, to save everyone but themselves. You see, people think soul contracts are mystical, untouchable forces, but Jung's research revealed something far more profound and frankly revolutionary. Here's what most people don't understand about these invisible agreements. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll never see an empath's transformation the same way again. According to Carl Jung, the psyche operates through what he called archetypal patterns. The empath unknowingly enters what Jung termed the healer's contract, an unconscious agreement to absorb others' pain, to sacrifice their own needs, to remain the eternal giver. But what happens when someone with extraordinary emotional intelligence finally says no to this ancient pattern? What Jung discovered about breaking soul contracts will shock you. Empaths live in what Jung called sacred obligation. They feel cosmically responsible for others' happiness, yet they've learned to ignore their own suffering. They sense when others need them, yet they've forgotten how to hear their own soul's cry. This isn't coincidence. It's what Jung termed the martyr archetype, the unconscious role they've been playing across lifetimes. But here's where it gets dangerous and why energy vampires should be terrified. Carl Jung said that the most powerful spiritual act is conscious rebellion against unconscious programming. Empaths, through repeated soul exhaustion and spiritual depletion, are forced into what Jung called the breaking point. They don't just feel tired, they reach a moment of existential clarity where they see the contract they never signed, the agreement they never consciously made, the role they're finally ready to abandon. The narcissist, the taker, the spiritual parasite, sees the empath soul contract as permanent and makes a fatal miscalculation. They think they're dealing with someone eternally bound to give, someone cosmically obligated to stay. But Jung discovered that those who carry the deepest spiritual contracts also possess the strongest power to shatter them. Why? Because breaking a soul contract isn't just psychological transformation, it's spiritual revolution. Listen carefully to what happens next, because this is where reality itself begins to shift. According to Carl Jung's theory of spiritual individuation, every soul must eventually choose authenticity over obligation. For most people, this never happens. But for empaths who've been drained to the point of spiritual bankruptcy, this choice becomes unavoidable. The moment they decide to break the contract, Jung observed that something extraordinary occurs in both the physical and spiritual realms. Here's what Jung understood that most spiritual teachers miss. Soul contracts aren't weaknesses, they're tests. The empath doesn't just feel called to heal others, they're being challenged to discover their own worth beyond service. Every one-sided relationship, every energy vampire, every spiritually immature soul they've carried becomes data. And when that data reaches a critical mass, that's when you witness what Jung called the soul's awakening. And it's absolutely unstoppable. Carl Jung discovered that the most powerful spiritual transformations happen not in meditation, but in rebellion. He called this the breaking of false dharma, the moment when someone rejects their programmed purpose to discover their authentic calling. The empath who has been serving becomes sovereign. The one who was rescuing becomes selective. The one who was giving becomes sacred with their energy. This isn't about becoming selfish or cold. Jung understood that true spiritual power emerges when someone breaks free from unconscious contracts, when they acknowledge their right to boundaries, to rest, to receive. The empath doesn't lose their gift, they reclaim their power. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind about what happens next. According to Carl Jung, there's a difference between unconscious service and conscious choice. Most empaths operate from their soul contract. They give automatically, they rescue reflexively, they drain themselves compulsively. But the empath who breaks their contract, they operate from what Jung called sovereign will. They don't need to save everyone, because they've already won the most important spiritual battle, the one for their own soul. Jung said that the greatest spiritual victory is not healing others, but refusing to abandon yourself in the process. And this is where the energy vampire realizes they've made a catastrophic error in judgment. Carl Jung observed that spiritual parasites rely on the empath's unconscious agreement to suffer. They need you to believe you're cosmically obligated to tolerate their dysfunction. But when an empath reaches what Jung called spiritual autonomy, they become immune to these manipulations. They stop playing their assigned role entirely. Jung discovered that the most powerful spiritual position is freedom born from conscious choice, not bondage born from unconscious programming. The awakened empath doesn't leave because they're bitter. They break the contract because they finally remember who they are. What happens next will redefine everything you thought you knew about spiritual agreements. According to Carl Jung's research on soul archetypes, empaths possess what he called cosmic sensitivity. But this isn't spiritual weakness, it's advanced energetic intelligence. They can sense soul contracts, detect karmic patterns, recognize spiritual manipulation before it's even fully formed. But here's the twist Jung identified. When this spiritual intelligence combines with hard-earned boundaries, it creates something unprecedented. The empath stops being a spiritual doormat and becomes a conscious creator. They don't operate from obligation anymore. They operate from sacred choice. And the transformation that follows, Jung had a specific term for it, and it's absolutely game-changing. Carl Jung called it the return to soul sovereignty, the ability to honor others without abandoning yourself, to give without depleting yourself, to love without losing yourself. The empath who has broken their soul contract develops this sovereignty at a level most souls never reach. They become what Jung termed spiritually complete, whole unto themselves. They no longer need others' approval to trust their spiritual path. They no longer require external validation to know their worth. They stop being available to anyone who doesn't honor their sacred energy. But here's the part that will send chills down your spine. According to Carl Jung, when an empath breaks their soul contract, it sends ripples through the collective unconscious. Other empaths feel it. The universe feels it. Energy vampires suddenly find their supply cut off, not just from one empath, but as a pattern begins to shift across the spiritual realm. Jung discovered that one awakened empath breaking their contract gives permission for thousands of others to do the same. It's not just personal liberation, it's collective revolution. The final phase is what Jung called the new covenant, and it changes everything. Carl Jung understood that breaking an old soul contract isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new conscious agreement. The empath who has reclaimed their sovereignty doesn't stop giving. They start giving from overflow, not from depletion. They don't stop healing. They heal from wisdom, not from obligation. This is what Jung called conscious service, and it's infinitely more powerful than unconscious martyrdom. The awakened empath becomes what Jung termed a liberated soul. They serve when it aligns with their truth. They give when it honors their energy. They love when it's reciprocal and sacred. They've mastered what Jung called spiritual discernment. And according to Carl Jung's lifetime of research, this is the most dangerous thing to anyone who benefits from their unconscious contracts. Someone who has learned to honor themselves as fiercely as they once honored others. The empath's journey from spiritual slave to sovereign soul is what Jung called the ultimate individuation. They descend into obligation, recognize the chains, break the contract, and emerge not just free, but holy. This is the psychology and spirituality of the awakened empath. And once you understand it, you'll never underestimate the cosmic power of someone who has learned to break what was never theirs to carry, reclaim what was always theirs to hold, and honor the sacred truth that their soul was never meant to be everyone's answer, but their own revolution.